بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد صدقكم الله وعده إذ تحسونهم بإذنه حتى إذا فشلتم وتنازعتم في الأمر وعصيتم من بعد ما أراكم ما تحبون منكم من يريد الدنيا ومنكم من يريد الآخرة ثم صرفكم عنهم ليبتليكم ولقد عفا عنكم والله ذو فضل على المؤمنين صدق الله العظيم. In our last session we were discussing the battle of Uhud and how the mushrikeen had intended to attack the Muslims once their caravan had arrived and Abu Sufyan brought the money to them, and they prepared an entire army and they began to march towards Medina Munawwara. The uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Talib, he wrote a secret letter to the Prophet ﷺ informing the Prophet ﷺ that they were coming to attack. The Prophet ﷺ, he then took advice from the companions, took mashwara from the companions on what to do, to fight a defensive battle, or to go out and fight an offensive battle, to fight from Medina Munawwara, or to step outside Medina Munawwara and then fight them in the battlefield. The younger companions, they said that they wanted to fight in the battlefield, while the elderly said they wanted to fight from Medina Munawwara, until the younger companions, and along with them Hazrat Hamza radiallahu anh, they pushed on going to the battlefield, and the Prophet ﷺ, he agreed to go to the battlefield. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he went inside and he put his armor on and he came back outside. And then he told the Sahaba then said to the Prophet ﷺ that why don't you rethink it? Probably we may want to fight a battle from Medina Munawwara. The Prophet ﷺ said that once a Nabi puts his armor on, he doesn't take it off until the battle's over. So now we're going to go to the battle. And the Sahaba then they traveled with the Prophet ﷺ until they arrived to the mountain of Uhud. And the Prophet ﷺ, he placed soldiers in certain areas of the battlefield, and with great tactic the companions were set in their place. And there was a little hill by the mountain of Uhud where the Prophet ﷺ had set some companions to sit there and to guard. They were great archers, they were like the snipers. So they were sitting there, and the Prophet ﷺ, he told them to stay in their place and not to move from there. Even if there was victory or there was loss, they were not to move from there. The Prophet ﷺ said, even if the bodies are being lifted away from here, or you see victory coming out of the battlefield, you have no permission to move. So then the companions, they began to fight. We discussed this all last week. I'm just going through it again, so we catch up. We've been out for 2 weeks. So what happened was that the Sahaba, they were fighting in the battlefield. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave out the sword to Abu Dujana radiallahu ta'ala an, and he said, I will fulfill the right of it. And he fought in the battlefield so courageously that any person that came in front of him, he dropped that person down. And the only one person to get away and live through his sword was? Who remembers? The one person that got away from Abu Dujana's sword, it was a lady, Hinda. When Abu Dujana went towards her to attack her, she called for help and no one came to help her. So he thought to himself that the honor of the sword of the Prophet is such that I should not kill a lady who was helpless. She doesn't deserve to be killed by the great sword of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet's sword is more honorable, has more izzah than killing a lady who is useless, who has no help at all. So then he pulled his sword back away from her. And they fought until the point came where the Muslims were victorious. It was as if there was nothing standing in front of them, until the point came where the kuffar were retreating, and the Muslims were busy picking away all the riches and all the stuff that was lying in the battlefield. Someone was picking up this person's sword, someone was picking up this person's armor, someone was picking up this person's shield. So now the 50 or companions that were sitting on the hill who were supposed to be guarding, when they saw the companions picking up things from the battlefield, they said to their friends that now the battle's over, let's go in the battlefield and let's enjoy the booty, let's enjoy all the stuff that's there. So then the Amir of the companions that was there, the leader, he said that we can't move from here. This was the order of the Prophet ﷺ, we remain here as we were told to do. So now there was a difference of opinion. A group of them, they left from the place and they went into the battlefield. They lowered down into the battlefield and they started picking up all the stuff that was there. Now what happened was Khalid bin Walid, who at the time hadn't accepted Islam, he recognized the chance to attack. Now there was a hill that was on the side of the battle of Uhud, and it was actually a pathway to going into the battlefield, kind of like a back entrance into the battlefield. Now if he brought an army and attacked to the back entrance, the Muslims were at the front, there were still a few kuffar fighting, and if a whole surge of them came from behind, it was just going to sandwich them and put them out of their place, kind of like a big knockout. So he tried to get in, but then he saw 50 archers there, and 50 of them, they were so fast and so accurate that they could have taken a whole army out. But now what happened was, out of the 50, there were only 10 remaining, 10 or so remaining. So then he took the chance and he came with the army and knocked out all 10 of them. Made them all shaheed. Now Khalid bin Walid, along with his people, they came into the battlefield. They came from behind and they began to attack the Muslims. Now as soon as they attacked the Muslims, this itself caused a really big turnover in the battle, where the Muslims now lost their stability, they lost their position in the battlefield. What was happening in front of them, something was happening behind them. And then what happened was, the companion who had the flag, the companion who was given the flag of the Muslims in the battle of Uhud, his name was Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu ta'ala. He was a companion who once upon a time used to wear such clothes that the people of Makkah Mukarramah used to envy his clothing. His fragrance was such that the people of Makkah Mukarramah would give an example that if you want fragrance, go and look at Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu ta'ala, who before he accepted Islam. He was from one of the most wealthiest families. So he was given the flag. After he accepted Islam, obviously his parents kicked him out of the house, they took all the riches away. But still he was young and he was given the flag in the battle of Uhud. So he had this flag, and now the Muslims were being attacked from behind. They had an army in front of them. The first thing the kuffar did was, they wanted that flag to fall down. So what they did was, they went and they attacked Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu ta'ala. When they attacked Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu ta'ala, Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh, he was martyred and he became shaheed. The next person to take the flag after Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh was Ali radiallahu anh. He took the flag and he raised it again. Now Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh, the reason why his shahada and him passing away and falling down in that battle was very crucial, was because Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh, he looked very similar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In looks, he was very similar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one of the kuffar, when they saw Mus'ab bin Umair on the ground dead, he shouted out that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been killed. Na'udhu billahi min dhalik. Now first of all, the Muslims are in such a chaos, where they're being attacked from the front, from the back, they can't see the flag anymore, and now someone is shouting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. Now just that word and that statement itself was touching, like it was like poking and pinning every nerve in their body. And these people totally lost control of themselves. One companion, he said to the others, that we were fighting for the sake of this deen. Now that the Prophet ﷺ is gone, there's no longer a need for us to live. Let's just jump in the battlefield and give our life away. And they fell inside, and many of them even became shaheed like this. Now what happened was, the Prophet ﷺ, he was at the top of he was a little away from the rest of the army, and he was making the plans, and he was calling the shots on what to do in the battlefield. Now what happened was, the kuffar, they realized the Prophet ﷺ wasn't in the battle itself, in the actual core of the battle, so he was somewhere. So they began to search for the Prophet ﷺ. And they spotted the Prophet ﷺ. And when they spotted the Prophet ﷺ, they basically rushed towards the Prophet ﷺ. Because if they made the Prophet ﷺ, na'udhu billahi min dhalik, shaheed, then it was as if the battle was totally over. There was nothing more left to it. Putting the Prophet ﷺ to the ground, may Allah save us all, may Allah, alhamdulillah, that he favored the Muslims by saving us from seeing that day and from repeating that history if it would have taken place. But alhamdulillah, if they did that, na'udhu billah, what would have happened? It was as if they put Islam down. So now what happened was, in their eyes. So what happened was, the Prophet ﷺ, he called on companions. He said, who will come to help? Who will come to defend me? So a group of the Ansar, they came in front of the Prophet ﷺ. There were 7 of them. And the kuffar, as soon as they rushed, they ran towards the kuffar to push them off and to defend and give the Prophet ﷺ some time to get some sahaba around them and get a little army together so they can defend the Prophet ﷺ. The 7 Ansar, they ran forward and they were all martyred. All of them became shaheed. Now what happened was, the kuffar, they began to rush towards the Prophet ﷺ. 14 sahaba, they stood around the Prophet ﷺ and they made a circle. And they said that we'll give our lives, but these people will never get close to the Prophet ﷺ. 7 of them were from the Muhajirin, and 7 of them were from the Ansar. And they stood there and they fought and they fought and they fought with all what they had in their bodies. It's as if these weak human beings turned into lions. And they were fighting away. And it comes one narration that one Sahabi, he was so loud in the battlefield. He was telling the kuffar that, come and let me show you who I am. The Prophet ﷺ said that his voice was more beautiful in the battlefield than 100 of you singing poems. This is how beautiful his voice was. When he was calling them and challenging them, that come to me, do you think you can touch the Prophet ﷺ? So now these Sahaba, they were defending the Prophet ﷺ. Now what happened was that, at the same time, there was this there was so much more happening at this, simultaneously in different parts of the battlefield. So now these 14 would sometimes reduce to 11, sometimes it would reduce to 12, sometimes it would even reduce lower than this too. Until a point came that the Prophet ﷺ was attacked. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, his brother Utbah, he threw stones at the Prophet ﷺ, because of which the lower teeth of the Prophet ﷺ were made shaheed. They came out. And then he carried on throwing stones on the Prophet ﷺ until the lip of the Prophet ﷺ was also bruised. And then another one of the kuffar, he came and he struck the Prophet ﷺ with a strong strike on the jaw of the Prophet ﷺ. Because of which two of the rings that were in the helmet of the Prophet ﷺ, they actually went inside the Prophet ﷺ's jaw. Inside his cheek. They went through the skin and they were actually clinging on inside from the cheek of the Prophet ﷺ. And then another kafir came and he had struck the Prophet ﷺ on the head, and the Prophet ﷺ was bleeding. So now the Prophet ﷺ was injured, he was bleeding from his teeth, at the same time his lip was bruised, and there was actually a piece of his helmet inside his cheek, and there was also a really big wound on the head of the Prophet ﷺ. So there was one Sahabi who quickly rushed towards the Prophet ﷺ, and he put his mouth against the forehead of the Prophet ﷺ, and he basically sucked out the blood. Before he would bruise, he sucked out the blood of the Prophet ﷺ. And when he sucked it out, the Prophet ﷺ, he turned towards him and he said to him that even though I didn't ask you to do that, let me just tell you right now, the fire of hell can never touch you now that you have a portion of a Nabi inside you. And the Sahabi was basically given glad tidings to paradise. And then Abu Ubaidah radiallahu ta'ala, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he used his teeth to pull out the metal from the cheek of the Prophet ﷺ, so the pain would cut down. And in the process, he also lost two of his teeth. The Sahabi who pulled out the metal piece from the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ, he lost two of his teeth in the process. Now what happened was the Sahaba, when they realized the Prophet ﷺ was injured, they rushed towards the Prophet ﷺ as a defense line. It was Hazrat Talha radiallahu ta'ala, and he stood in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and he became a living shield. A human being like me and you he was. He had feelings, he had nerves on his body, he felt it. If you scratch, just as me and you when we first scratch with a nail, we feel it. He also had, senses on his skin. He felt. He was a human being. He stood in front of the Prophet ﷺ and he became a shield. He's in the battlefield and people are actually shooting arrows at the Prophet ﷺ, and he's standing there and he's taking all the arrows right inside his chest, right into his body. And it comes in the narrations that Abu Talha radiallahu ta'ala on that day had 35 to 39 wounds in his body. 35 to 39 wounds in one person's body. He was standing there defending the Prophet ﷺ. It was everything that they had. Without the Prophet ﷺ, they had no purpose of living. They already knew what it felt like living without the Prophet ﷺ. This is the reality. They already had a taste of that life. That what it was living without the Prophet ﷺ. And now they had the chance to enjoy the pleasure of living with the Prophet ﷺ. Now these people every day they can see the Prophet ﷺ smiling. Now these people they can enjoy the fragrance of the Prophet ﷺ. Now these people can enjoy the soft touch of the Prophet ﷺ. Now these people could hear the Quran directly from the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ. It was as if they were living the best life that any person could ever dream of. Not as if they were. They were living the best of their life. And now here comes the moment when they're in the battlefield and two armies clash, and there's a chance now that the most beloved thing to them in their life, the Prophet ﷺ, they may lose. So the Sahaba, they jumped in front of the Prophet ﷺ. There was a Sahabi who was injured while defending the Prophet ﷺ. And when he fell to the ground, he said to his other companion, that take me to, he goes, before I die, he goes, I know I'm out now, but I want to be by the Prophet ﷺ while I die. So they picked up his body and they brought it in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and they put him on the ground until his face, it touched the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. And he passed away like this. His face touched the feet of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was injured while defending the Prophet ﷺ in this state, and he passed away like this. I heard this story once. This story I actually heard from, when I heard the story the first time, I actually heard the story from Maulana Zulfiqar Sahab, from Pakistan. He narrated the story when I heard it first. And when he narrated the story, he goes, "Aisa lagta hai ki shair ne kya hi khub kaha." He goes, what a beautiful thing did the poet say when he narrated the story. The poet says, explaining this scenery, he says, "Nikal jaye dam tere qadmon ke niche, yahi dil ki hasrat, yahi arzu hai. Teri me'raj ke tu loho qalam tak pahuncha, meri me'raj ke main tere qadmon tak pahuncha." So while explaining the scenery, how, the Sahabi, he's injured on the ground while defending the Prophet ﷺ, and then he falls on the ground, he's injured, and he's in the last moments of his life, and he tells the person next to him, I know I'm down, I know I'm out, but I just want to die in the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. So then the Sahabi takes him and he puts them by the feet of the Prophet ﷺ, and he passes away like this. So the poet explaining that scenery actually says, the example was like kind of like, as if the Sahabi was saying that, Nikal jaya dam tere qadmo ke niche, that my last breath I take underneath your feet. Yahi dil ki hasrat, yahi arzu. It's all I could ever desire, all I could ever want in my life, that I passed away in the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine how great these Sahaba were. How much Allah loved them, that He actually gave them the chance to pass away at the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. Subhanallah. And then he says, Teri me'raj ke tu loho qalam tak pahuncha, O Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He desired to honor you, He called you all the way to the loh and the qalam, very, very high for mi'raj. But when Allah desired to honor me, He just dropped me off to your feet. That was when I realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually loved me, and I was radiyallahu anhu wa radu anhu, and I was actually, honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then in this battlefield now, Abu Dujana radiyallahu anhu, he realized how critical the situation had now become. So he also jumped in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this time what he did was he turned his face toward the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he hugged the Prophet really close by. And he turned his chest towards the kuffar, and wherever they tried to attack from, he just turned the Prophet away, and he basically took all the arrows in his back. And he held the face of the Prophet low. So the Prophet ﷺ would not be injured by any of the arrows, or by any of the stones being showered on the Prophet ﷺ. Now what happened was, at the same time, the Prophet ﷺ, next to him he had a Sahabi whose name was Abu Talha radiallahu ta'ala. Abu Talha radiallahu anhu was very, very fluent in showering his arrows. He was very fast, really fast in showering his arrows. One after the other. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told Abu Talha, stand in front of me and show these people. So Abu Talha radiallahu anhu said, Oh Rasulullah, you're asking me to show my ability, let me show these people what I'm made of. And then he started shouting. He started saying to them, like, come in front of me, let me show you who I am. And he took the arrows and he started showering them. He took the arrows and he started showering them on the enemies, until his bow actually broke. The bow that he was using to fire the arrows, he was going so fast and so vigorously, he was showering the arrows on them, that it comes in narrations, it was as if 100 people were throwing arrows, that this one man was throwing himself. And then his bow broke. His bow snapped into pieces. So now there was another Sahabi passing by. He just pulled his bow out of his back and started shooting again. And then he was shooting, until the second bow also broke. And there was another person passing by, who was fighting with the sword. He just pulled his bow out of his pocket, just pulled it out like that, and started showering again. And then on the other hand, there was Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu ta'ala. He was also defending the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did is he told the Sahabi that when Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu was defending the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was also a very good archer. He was very fast and very fluent in showering his arrows, and a very powerful individual. So when he was showering his arrows, he was almost out of arrows. The Prophet ﷺ saw how great he was and what his aim was like. That single arrow and the guy is out. Single arrow and the guy is out in front of him. So he was so good at what he was doing. So the Prophet ﷺ, he took his arrows and said, Sa'ad, shoot more. Irmi fidaka abi wa ummi. He took his own arrows. The Prophet ﷺ took his arrows and gave it to Sa'ad radiallahu anhu and said, Sa'ad, shoot these people. Irmi fidaka abi wa ummi. That fire your arrows at them. May my mother and father be sacrificed for you. Ali radiallahu anhu, when he heard this, he said, oh my God. Ali radiallahu anhu says that never in my life had I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this for anyone other than Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu. That, shoot the arrow, Sa'ad, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you. What a thing to say. The Prophet ﷺ saying, may my father and mother, fidaka abi wa ummi. May my mother and father be sacrificed for you. So then he said, I never heard this to be said for anyone, except for Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu ta'ala. So now again in this battle, there was so much happening. The Sahaba, they were there. There was another Sahabi by the name of Qatada bin Nu'man radiallahu ta'ala. He realized that someone's showering the arrows, someone's defending the body of the Prophet ﷺ. So what he did was he put his face in front of the face of the Prophet ﷺ. He lined himself in such a manner that it was as if his face was blocking the face of the Prophet ﷺ. So wherever the face and head of the Prophet ﷺ went, he put his head that way. And if it went to the right, he put it to the right. If it went to the left, he put it to the left. If it was straight, he put his head straight. Until what happened was one person, he shot him with the arrow right in his eye. And when he shot him in the eye, he pulled out the arrow, and along with the arrow came out his eye. And his eye came inside his head. So now he has one eye there and he's injured. And here, the Prophet ﷺ's life is still at threat. The situation is still very critical. So then he comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that, Ya Rasulullah, what is this? My eye's in my hand. Help me. So the Prophet ﷺ, first when he saw this, the Prophet ﷺ started crying. That this person, he was defending me, And in return, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tested him by taking his eye out. He was hit right in his eye. But imagine, look at these Sahaba, subhanAllah. Such pain that if me and you were hit like this, you'd probably be on the ground crying, like little girls. We'd probably be crying on the ground, I'm hurt, my eye's out. Put a bandage on there, put some alcohol on there. Do this, do that. That's how we'd be. And this Sahabi is holding his eye and he's still standing there. And he's saying to the Prophet ﷺ that, look at this, Rasulullah, what do I do now? So Rasulullah ﷺ said to Qatada bin Nu'man radiallahu ta'ala, while crying, the Prophet was crying himself. And he said, oh Qatada, you have two choices. Either paradise or your eye. Which one do you want? Do you want Jannah or do you want your eye? So sometimes when the Sahaba would come to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ used to always remind them that for any difficulty you have, if you're patient, what will you get in return? Jannah. If you're patient with the difficulty Allah gives you, every person has a different difficulty. Every person has their own difficulty. Especially when it comes to some handicapped feature or something that a person handicapped in, or some physical difficulty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees that person paradise. So for example, there was one Sahabiya, she came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I get these attacks, I get these seizures. So she said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh Rasulullah, pray for me that I don't get these seizures anymore. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if you're patient, Allah will give you paradise. What did he say? I can pray for you, but if you're patient, what are you going to return? You'll get Jannah. So then she says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I don't mind being patient, but the issue is whenever I have the seizure, what happens? My satar opens up. When I have the seizure, my cloth, it lifts up and my satar opens and everyone is seeing my satar. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised his hand and made dua, oh Allah, next time, from now on, whenever she has the seizures, never let her satar open up, and for you is paradise. So this is the way the Prophet ﷺ, the tarbiyat he gave them. That you be patient with your test, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you paradise. So the same thing, in the battlefield, at such a critical moment, the tarbiyat never changed. At such a critical time, what happened? The teachings and the nurturing of the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't change. The very same answer that they would have got while sitting at home in a comfortable house in Medina Munawwara was the very same thing the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahabi in the battlefield. Another thing we see, the Prophet ﷺ is injured from more than 4 places in his body. And he's profusely bleeding. But yet the Prophet ﷺ did not complain, and he still reminded the Sahaba of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did he do? He still reminded them of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That be patient, Qatada, and you get paradise. So he says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh Rasulullah, I don't mind being patient, I don't mind getting paradise, but the thing is I'm married. And if I go back to my house with one eye, my wife may not like me anymore. So even he's in the battlefield, this is the way he responds. He says that if I go back with one eye, my wife may not like me anymore. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam applied his saliva and then he put it back inside. He placed the eye back in he placed his eye back into the socket, and the Prophet made the dua, Allahumma a'tihi jamalan. Oh Allah, grant the Sahabi beauty. So now the Sahaba radwanullahi ta'ala ajma'in, they were all over the battlefield, and subhanAllah, they were making their sacrifice for the sake of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now what happened was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he began to move backwards, trying to find a safe place to move into. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam fell into a ditch, there was a ditch that was dug out by the kuffar as a trap. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he fell inside. So when he fell inside, the kuffar, they knew exactly what to do now. All they had to do was throw a stone that way and it was going to hit him. All they had to do was shower their arrows in that way, and even throw the horse inside, the horse would probably do its job. So Ali radiallahu anh, immediately he put his hand out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And another companion who lowered himself, he jumped inside the ditch, and he pushed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam outside the ditch. Get outside. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got back onto the battlefield. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, along with some Sahaba, they lowered themselves into like a little valley area. The Sahaba gathered there. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anh, he bought some water, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used the water to wash away the wound on his face, wash away the blood. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did wudu, and he was injured, so he sat down and led the Sahaba in the battle of in the Salat of Dhuhr with Jamaat. The Prophet was sitting down and he was injured. He led the Salah. And it comes in the narration, the Sahaba sitting behind were also injured, so they were also sitting down too. The Sahaba, the battle was such that even that they also sat down and read the Salah. Another thing we learned, that the Sahaba at such a critical time, did they leave their Salah? Did they make up excuses? That, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, I have this headache, I have that headache, my eye's hurting from here, and it's this problem, it's that problem, I don't have a ride, and it's at the masjid's, half a block away, and I can't make it there. All this, they never made any of these excuses. The most difficult situation me and you can be in is that we just came back from work and we're tired. And the Sahaba were in the battlefield. And not just in a battle that they were victorious in, they were in a battle that they were facing a loss at. And yet the Sahaba, they gathered and prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And not only did they pray alone, the Prophet he emphasized on praying with Jama'at. This was how they stuck to the basis. Me and you, we want to conquer the world without sticking to the basis. The most basic thing, if a person goes to a talk and delivers, or a university or a college, or sometimes some kind of upper scale setting, and he gives a talk on Salah, the people in the gathering say, oh, this Imam doesn't know anything, he's talking about Salah. Talk about more important things, talk about politics, talk about, the elections, talk about, the crisis around the world. So everything is in its place. But we learn lessons from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, where the very same paradise was reminded to the Sahaba. At a time of difficulty, the Prophet didn't give some long speech. He reminded the Sahaba of paradise. He reminded the Sahaba of patience. He reminded the Sahaba of the importance of Salah. He reminded the Sahaba of the importance of Jama'ah. He reminded the Sahaba of how important it was for them to stick together. The most basic things the Prophet he enforced and emphasized onto the companions at the most difficult of times. So that when the Prophet he read Salah along with the companions, now what happened was not because a great portion of the companions were now resting themselves, they were greatly injured. The Quraysh, the people of Makkah Mukarramah, they began to walk through the battlefield, and all the dead Sahaba that were there, they began to gather their bodies and begin to mutilate their bodies. All the Sahaba that were there in the battlefield, whether it be male or female, they begin to mutilate all their bodies. Someone's hand they're cutting off, someone's leg they're cutting off, someone's toe they're just cutting off, someone's dying and they begin to poke them in the face and poke them here and do all these filthy things with their body. Do all the filthy things with their body. And then Hinda, the very famous incident, she came to the body of Hamza radiallahu ta'ala, the chacha and the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she cut out his organs and she began to chew on the organs of Hamza radiallahu ta'ala. And then she asked who was the one who killed Hamza radiallahu anh, and she found out it was Wahshi, who later on became a Sahabi radiallahu ta'ala. So then she took off her necklace and she gave it to Wahshi. She said, this is my gift to you for killing Hamza radiallahu ta'ala. Because he was the Asadullah wa Asad Rasuli. He was a lion of Allah in his Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He was a very courageous individual. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then he was there with the Sahaba and they rested there. Until what happened was, while the Quraysh, they thought the battle was over, the Quraysh basically, they accepted themselves to be victorious, and they were walking to the battlefield, just mutilating the bodies, making a mess out of the Muslims that were lying there, the Shaheed Sahaba. And then one of the kuffar, they called out saying that, is there anyone left to fight us from the family of the Prophet ﷺ or the Prophet ﷺ himself? So the Sahaba were there and they were about to speak up. The Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, don't say anything, stay quiet. Right now we're not in the position to go and fight against these people. We need to rest, we need to get ourselves together, and then we can fight these people again, but for right now we need to be patient. So then the Sahaba, they remained silent, that were with the Prophet ﷺ. Then they called out, is there anyone that is here to fight from the clan of Abu Bakr? So then Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, he's about to stand up, say, I'm still here, but then the Prophet ﷺ said, no, silent. So the person called out 3 times, no answer came. Then the guy called out, is there anyone here to fight us from the clan of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anh? Again, the Prophet, he showed his hand to Umar radiallahu anh, that you can't stand up. Remain silent. Now, even the kuffar, subhanAllah, forget about, having difference of opinion on this. Even the kuffar, they knew that after the Prophet, there were 2 people that were there. Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu ta'ala. So in the battlefield, they asked her, is there any of these 2 left? So when they thought to themselves that these 3 people are out, they said, you know what? It's all over. Just go back home and let's go back to our luxuries. So now when they were heading back, Umar radiallahu anh, after the Prophet wasn't looking, he got up and he said, I'm still here. He called on the battlefield. He says, I'm still alive. So Abu Sufyan, who called out, he turned back. And then they had a very long and lengthy discussion, back and forth, that this and that and this and that. So then Abu Sufyan's like, okay, if you're alive, let you live with the grief of the departure of your beloved ones, and let you go back home and die of insanity. So then Umar radiallahu anh replied, the army was almost gone. They had already left the battlefield. Just one person left behind, 1 or 2 people. So Umar radiallahu anh then told this person, just for the facts, to let you know straight, that Abu Bakr and the Prophet are also alive too. And the Prophet is here with us. And all the Sahaba are also here with us. So then, now, because the army was already gone, and they were more or less victorious, because they had very, badly, injured the Sahaba, it comes in the narration that 70 of the Sahaba were made shaheed on that day. 70 Sahaba were martyred on that day. So then the Prophet, a majority of them, which were Ansar. So then they headed back to their place. The Prophet, he gathered the Sahaba together, whoever was left, and he told them that go and gather the body of the Sahaba, the bodies of the Sahaba that are lying in the battlefield. So then he told one Sahabi, the Prophet Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anh, he told Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anh, that go and find Sa'd bin Rabi radiallahu anh. Go and find him, give my salam to him, and ask him how is he doing. So then the Sahabi, he began to say, Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anh, he began to look for Sa'd bin Rabi radiallahu ta'ala. He looked for Sa'd bin Rabi radiallahu anh, and he saw him. he said to him that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he passes on his salam to you. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he passes his regard to you, he passes his salam to you. Sa'd bin Rabi radiallahu ta'ala, he was lying there, and he replied by saying that, well, these are the last moments of my life, I'm dying. He said, I'm dying right now. But however, return my salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And tell the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Sa'd bin Rabi said before he left this world, that Ya Rasulullah, I have no doubt that you did the biggest favor for the ummah by passing on the message of Islam to us. Subhanallah. The last words he says, فَفَاضَتْ نَفْسَهُ, and then he passed away. The last thing he said, he goes, Oh Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the only thing I can say is that I have no doubt that you fulfilled the rights of serving deen, and you did us the biggest favor of giving us Islam. And then Sa'd bin Rabi radiallahu anhu, he passed away. And then the Sahabi came back and he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, subhanallah, you know, the whole situation of what was happening at the time, the Prophet was continuously crying on seeing the situation of the Sahaba in the battlefield. And then the Prophet was told regarding his uncle Hamza radiallahu anhu, the companions were looking for his body for the longest time and they couldn't find it. And finally when they found it, the Prophet, he came there and he saw the body of his uncle. And then the Prophet, first when he saw it, tears came into his eyes and then he began to shake. And it comes in the narration that then the tears began to flow from the eyes of the Prophet when he saw what had happened to his uncle. Because you have to keep in mind that why the Prophet cried so much when his uncle Hamza passed away. Because every family member that remained with him was all he wanted. Every family member that remained with the Prophet was very valuable. His grandfather, his father, his mother, his uncle Abu Talib, his wife Khadija, they had all left, they had all passed away before this. And the very few close family members that remained with him, especially those that were Muslims, they were everything of the Prophet ﷺ. Everything. And now the Prophet ﷺ is sitting there looking at yet another one of his family members leaving him. But this family member of his body is mutilated. And his liver is out, and his one body part is here, one body part is there, everything's just in pieces. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's looking at this, and tears come into his eyes, and the Prophet ﷺ speaks to Hamza radiallahu anhu. He says to Hamza, he goes, you were such a good person. You always took care of those who were needy. You always helped people. You remember, Hamza radiallahu anhu was the one that when he heard Abu Jahl was saying bad things to the Prophet, what did he do? He struck that guy on the head. When he heard that Abu Jahl was saying bad things to the Prophet, Hamza just come back from his hunting. He came back and he heard that Abu Jahl was abusing the Prophet verbally. So he went to Abu Jahl and he took his bow and he smashed it on the guy's head and the guy fell over. And then he said, then Hamza radiallahu anh, he said, I believe in the Prophet ﷺ. He accepted his shahada there. That was the moment that he declared his shahada. So one of the Sahaba that were there, they said, I never knew you were a believer. He goes, well, now I am. He said, he accepted Islam just in defending the Prophet ﷺ. And there the Prophet ﷺ crying away, saying, Hamza, you were such a good person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's testing you, and inshallah for you is paradise. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was crying and crying and crying. And he was crying in a manner where, you know when a person cries, one thing is a person silently cries. They cry and tears come out of their eyes and they tear away. And then one thing, a person that they cry so much, they lose control that they start making noise, they start basically breathing heavily. And they lose control of their breathing. And as in Urdu we say, hichkiya ka kar hota hai. I'm not sure how you translate that in English. But it's actually an extreme cry where a person kind of loses control over themselves and the noises begin to come out when a person's crying. So it comes in the narration, this is how the Prophet ﷺ was crying on seeing Hamza radiallahu ta'ala. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he took an oath that for Hamza's mutilation, what will I do? I will mutilate in return 70 of their people. What will I do in return? 70 of their people. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. Right? Allah said that if you wish to take revenge, you can only take one for one. Look at the haqq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gathered all the Sahaba that were martyred. And as I mentioned, there were 70 Sahaba who were martyred in the Battle of Uhud. Out of which amongst them was Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu ta'ala. And Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, as I mentioned, he was a Sahabi that before Islam, he was extremely wealthy. Extremely wealthy. He was known for his clothing. He was known for his fragrance. He was known for his beauty. He was known for living a posh life. And here when his body is brought in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the kafan that is put on his body is not even enough to cover his feet and his head at the same time. Either you cover the head, either you cover the feet, you can't cover both. The Prophet, when he saw this, he started crying, saying that this is the same Mus'ab who used to wear new clothes almost every day. This was a person whose clothing was abundant to. And yet today for his kafan, we don't even have enough clothes to cover his body. So then the Prophet, he ordered the companions that put the cloth over his face and used leaves to cover his feet. So then Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, along with the other companions, he was buried, and the Muslims, they returned back to Medina Munawwara. While they were returning, now obviously in Medina Munawwara, as I mentioned, the word had spread that the Prophet ﷺ had passed away. So everyone from Medina Munawwara was coming to the battlefield to find out what exactly happened, the women, the elderly, the children, that what happened to the Prophet ﷺ. So one Sahabi, he narrates that while they were coming back to Medina Munawwara, there was one lady that they saw. And this lady, what happened was, she, in that battle, during the battle of Uhud, she lost her husband, her brother, and her father. And she was coming to the battlefield not to look for their bodies, but to look at the face of the Prophet ﷺ. Every time she asked someone, is the Prophet ﷺ okay? Someone would tell them, oh, your husband passed away. She would say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. But what about the Prophet? So then they would say, yes, he's okay, but he's in the battlefield. So then she'd carry on going, and she asked the next person, how was the Prophet ﷺ? I'm not sure about the Prophet ﷺ, but I saw your brother died in the battlefield. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. She carried on going. How was the Prophet ﷺ? The third person. I'm not sure how the Prophet ﷺ, one thing I am sure of is that your father passed away. So the husband passing away. Now, you ask a lady, you ask someone, a wife, that what it would mean to her to lose her spouse. Not one thing is you just lose them. One thing is they die while you're in the marriage. You actually martyred in the battlefield. And then you ask a brother what it feels like knowing, you ask a sister what it would feel like knowing that your brother was martyred in the battle. And then you ask a child what it would feel like knowing that your father was martyred in the battlefield. And yet every time she hears this, what is she saying? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. She carries on, how is the Prophet ﷺ? Until she sets eyes on the face of the Prophet ﷺ, and then she says, Ya Rasulullah, after seeing your face, all of my difficulties have now lifted away. Subhanallah, look at their love for the Prophet ﷺ. Now when we look at the Battle of Uhud, the question comes to mind, that what was it that pulled the Sahaba from a victory into a very difficult situation and actually caused them the battle? There are many things there. Someone may say it was because the Sahaba, they moved from their place, it was their fault. Someone may say it was this person's fault. Someone may say it was a sharp eye of Khalid bin Walid. People have given different interpretations to what it was. But the actual reality is that whenever we say the Muslims, some people they say this, that the Muslims lost in the Battle of Uhud. That isn't true. Because a Muslim never loses. Especially the one who strives in the path of Allah. What does Allah say in the Quran? وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those, Allah guides those who strive in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's no one that can doubt the intentions of the Sahaba and their courage and their sacrifice for the sake of deen. They sacrificed every drop of their blood, every drop of blood in their body for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we look at it, we ask that what was it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was demanding from the Sahaba? So what we learned is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was first of all testing them. That they had won a battle. They were victorious. And yes, they carried on calling out the name of Islam. They carried on announcing. But what about at the time of difficulty? What would the Sahaba do if they were to lose a battle? What would be their retaliation? What would be the lesson that they leave behind for those that will come to the Day of Judgment? All those that will look up to these people. The lesson we learn is patience. The lesson we learn is that love turns into extreme love. The lesson we learn is that whatever happens, we will defend the Prophet ﷺ. If it means us giving our life, we will do it, but we won't turn away from the Prophet ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was showing the Muslims, was showing the Prophet ﷺ the difference between the munafiqeen and the Muslims. On the way to Uhud, when the Muslims first set off from Medina Munawwara initially to come to the Battle of Uhud, what happened? A big portion of the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, they pulled themselves out of the army and they went back to Medina Munawwara. So first of all, the army was small and a big portion of them actually returned back to Medina Munawwara altogether. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was showing the Prophet ﷺ that where these people, they left before the battle even started. Where these people, the hypocrites, they left the battle before it even started. The Sahaba, they're on another level altogether. They're there even if the battle is to end. The only thing you're going to find from that battlefield is their dead bodies. They won't leave the Prophet ﷺ. And the Sahaba were tested. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He was showing how much they loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was their chance to show their love. See, for example, if a person is always victorious, if a person is always living a good life, then the only way you can test a person's love is at the time of difficulty. If you want to see, our teacher used to always say, right, that, at the time of a marriage, he would say, "Abhi bahut khush ho. Dekhta hu 3 saal baad tumhari kya halat hai." That, at the time of marriage, he would say that, "I see you're really happy right now," in the walima dawat, especially when he'd be invited to the walima dawat. It was known that you don't call Mana Bilal because he's going to say this to you. So he'd come to the walima dawat and he'd say to the dulha, the groom, "That seems like you're very happy. Let me see what happens to you after 3 years." Why don't you send me one of your pictures after 3 years? So, because at the beginning it's really, groomy and very lovey-dovey and everyone's really happy. But when the time of difficulty comes and a person pulls himself through that too, and then they still stick together, this is when a person actually sees the value of love. This is when love actually shows itself. When a person, he pulls through difficulty and yet he is still successful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He explains this in the Quran. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا مِنْكُمْ وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. That you think you're going to enter into paradise and yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not know which one of you. وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا مِنْكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not know which one of you is there to struggle and which one of you is there to be patient. Allah wants to know who is there to be patient. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see and wants to show all of mankind who is there to struggle in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now the Sahaba, subhanAllah, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains this in one verse of the Quran, as I mentioned, that the Sahaba and the Muslim is always a winner. The Muslim can never lose. The Muslim is always a winner. And Allah explains this in the Quran by saying, وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That in this world the Muslim is a winner, in the hereafter the Muslim is a winner. Those Sahaba who fell and they were martyred in the battlefield, what happened to these people? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say for them? That وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ. They don't think these people are dead. These people are actually alive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving these people sustenance. And the angels are washing their bodies. And all the great things that remain for these people who give their life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their reward is there. The Muslim never loses. He could either be victorious in the battlefield, or he could be lying in his grave and he could be victorious there too. In both ways he's the winner. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he used to make the dua, right? He used to say, Allahumma rzuqni shahadatan fi sabilik wa ja'al mawti fi baladi rasulik. He asked for a two-edged blade. He asked for both things. He said, "Oh Allah, I want shahadat and I want death in the city of Medina Munawwara. I want shahada and I also want death in the city of Medina." He used to make this dua during his khilafat. Now, a person making that dua at that time was kind of absurd, because the Muslims are conquering the world and he's saying, "I want shahadat and I want it in." That means someone had to come and kill him in Medina Munawwara. There had to be a battle that was going to take place and someone was going to come and kill him. But the one that is sincere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him what he wants. What does that person get? What happens to that person? Umar radiallahu anhu is leading his Fajr Salah, and a person comes from Yain and he stabs Umar radiallahu anhu, and Umar radiallahu anhu dies. In Medina Munawwara he becomes shaheed. He stabs Umar radiallahu anhu, and later on sometime later, Umar radiallahu anhu, he passes away, he becomes shaheed. So, وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The believer is always a winner. But there's patience required. The Prophet ﷺ, at no point did he start complaining to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a factor of shukr required, that a person thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever position he's in. Then there is a factor of reminding the Sahaba and staying together and keeping the unity there, even at a time of difficulty. And then there's so many things there that we learn from this battle, that how the Sahaba, they conducted themselves at this time, and they continue to show their love. So for example, when the Prophet ﷺ, when he was injured, when he was bleeding from all over his face, what was the dua the Prophet ﷺ was making? What was he making? He was saying, Allahumma ighfir lahum fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh, kama qala. Oh Allah, forgive these people because they don't know. He's making dua for the kuffar. Oh Allah, guide these people. Allah, forgive these people. They have no idea what they're doing. So yet the Prophet is still making dua for these people. Showing again that what should a person's conduct be and how should a person retaliate to a time of difficulty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He showed this in the battle of Uhud. And subhanAllah, the sacrifice the Sahaba gave, the sacrifice the Prophet gave in this battle, honestly, there's no way that a person can actually even try to understand what was actually happening in that battlefield. The Prophet was bleeding so much that when he returned back, when the Sahaba were sitting there, the Prophet was bleeding so much from his cheek that they tried to stop the blood, they couldn't stop it. So then what happened was, Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of the Prophet, she took a straw mat, not chatai, as we say in Urdu. She took a straw mat and she burnt it. And the ashes of that she put on the wound of the Prophet. And thereafter the bleeding came to a halt and stopped. But until there, the Prophet was bleeding away and bleeding away and bleeding away. So one more, just a side note. One thing we do learn, that doing ilaj is also from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Taking medication is also from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet, he had ilaj done. Whatever the ilaj may be, whatever the person prescribes. But ilaj was done, basically they used whatever they did, whatever they thought was appropriate to stop the bleeding of the Prophet ﷺ. So, khair, anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to understand. And honestly, we have to understand from this battle of Uhud, the lesson that we learn from all the sad stories and all the difficult sacrifices that we learn from the Sahaba, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tests certain of His companions, some people, some certain group of His servants. And the people that are tested by Allah are not those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates, But there are those servants of Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. But Allah tests these people to see which one of them comes out pure. You know, as we say in Urdu, kon khota or kon khada. Which one is pure, which one is real, and which one is false. Who is true in his claim and who is false in his claim. Everyone claiming they love Allah, but who was truthful in his claim? Bilal was truthful in his claim when he was there and saying Ahad, Ahad on the burning and the boiling sand of Medina Makkah Mukarram. Ka'b radiallahu anhu was truthful. Hamza radiallahu anhu was truthful. Abu Dujana was truthful. Talha was truthful. Abu Talha was truthful. Qatada bin Nu'man was truthful. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas was truthful. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, all these Sahaba who were there in the battles and with the Prophet ﷺ all their entire lives, these were the people that were truthful in their love for the Prophet ﷺ. There's one poem that actually kind of it drives the point to explain what actually it takes for a person to prove their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's actually a small little Urdu poem. It's quite amateur, but I'll narrate it and inshallah I'll also translate it at the same time. The poem goes that Muhabbat ka imtihan aasan nahi. Muhabbat ka imtihan aasan nahi. इश्क सिर्फ पाने का नाम नहीं. मुद्दतें बीत जाती है उसको हासिल करने में. ये सिर्फ हंसी मजाक का नाम नहीं. So the person says that, you know, that the test of love isn't easy. First, the test of love, muhabbat ka imtihan आसान नहीं. The test of love isn't easy. इश्क सिर्फ पाने का नाम नहीं. Love doesn't mean just to attain the person in front of you, just to have that person with you. Having the Prophet ﷺ or having your beloved doesn't mean just because you're a believer doesn't mean you truly have love. इश्क सिर्फ पाने का नाम नहीं. मुद्दतें बीत जाती है उसको हासिल करने में. You know, it takes years and years and years to actually achieve true love. ये सिर्फ हंसी मजाक का नाम नहीं. Love isn't just a little laughter and a little joy. So again, emphasizing the same point that there's a lot of sacrifice required, and a believer's reward is based on how much sacrifice he makes. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who strive in the path of Allah, Allah shows them. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the ability to strive in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a small level, on a large level, whatever we can do in our houses, in our families, with our friends. You know, even coming to Fajr Salah for us is a strive. Every single thing we do, we are rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we need to strive and sacrifice for the sake of deen. There is no way to prove we truly love our Creator and our Prophet and truly understand the value of our deen until we sacrifice for the sake of deen. We have to try to sacrifice for the sake of deen. Show that how much we also love our deen too. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the ability to make an effort for the sake of deen, to once again, revive the sunnah of the Sahaba and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this gathering. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk wa akhiru da'wana.